On this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, the good and the bad of the preseason so far for Memphis. Plus, the NBA GMs are not really sure what to make of this Grizzlies team either. I'm as confused as you. Let's try to get through it together on this episode of the show. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the special episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Special only in terms of us continuing to try something a little bit different. This episode going live after preseason game number 3 against the Atlanta Hawks. A loss for Memphis. The Grizzlies 0-3 on the preseason. We'll talk more about that here in a moment. But if you're tuning in for a normal Monday edition of the show, this episode went live a little bit early. So again, trying something a little bit different this year, checking out how things work in terms of getting our content to the audience as quickly as possible. Sometimes that'll mean a bonus episode. In the case of the preseason, if I'm being honest, it means this doubles as the Monday edition of the show. DeMichael and I will be back with you. DeMichael Cole, my co-host, commercial appeal beat writer there in Memphis, covering the Grizzlies. He and I, the dynamic duo, will ride again once more on Tuesday. But this is a Saturday night, Sunday, Monday edition in the preseason of Locked On Grizzlies. I appreciate you wherever you are, whenever you're taking in the show, joining me on this particular journey. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. Make DeMichael and I a part of your everyday Memphis Grizzlies and NBA content consumption adventure. Make sure that you are an everydayer at this stage, joining us each and every time that an episode drops. DeMichael and I will greatly appreciate it. And you will be a little bit better, at least a little bit smarter when it comes to the Memphis Grizzlies for coming along with us on our or in our little corner of the internet we like to call Locked On Grizzlies. So instead of breaking down specifically the Hawks game, because again, these games, I want to stress to you, my beloved listener, my beloved viewer, however you're taking in this program, these outcomes do not matter. The fact that the Memphis Grizzlies are 0-3 does not matter in the preseason. However, there is a caveat. Usually, and I was talking with Matt Moore at HP Basketball about this on X during the game, usually you don't want to go over. You don't want to go winless. But even then, in this particular case, because there will be no Ja Morant, almost certainly, because there will be no Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, Brandon Clark, I think you can throw that out a window. However, going over, there is a growing trend, Matt said, at HP Basketball on X, Locked On NBA, Locked On Nuggets host. There's a growing trend that usually those teams underperform when it comes to their win totals for the year, at least the over-unders, that sort of stuff. I think Memphis is exempt from that because of the fact that they are already not healthy. Now, if you believe Ja Morant, as DeMichael talked about on our last edition of the show, Ja will be there on opening night. There's an outside chance Jaren is there on opening night. Zach Edey, Brandon Clark likely will not be. You want to win, but the fact that they're losing is not what I'm concerned about. And in fact, I'm feeling so positive tonight, whenever you're taking in the show. You and I, we're going to start this wonderful excursion through Grizzlies basketball in 3 games into the preseason on the positive end. Things to be excited about if you are a Grizzlies fan after 3 contests. And number 1 for me with a bullet, isn't going to surprise anybody, is Ty Jerome. Ty Jerome's number 1 because I see Ty Jerome as a legitimate backup point guard for when Ja cannot be there. I see Ty Jerome as a legitimate creator of offense for himself and others. No, he did not have the most efficient offensive outing against the Atlanta Hawks. He only played 16 minutes in the game, 1 for 6 from 3, 4 from 11 from the field overall, 4 assists to 1 turnover. I like that. 4 assists to 1 turnover. I like that about Ty Jerome. But again, watching the game, the rhythm that he plays with, his emphasis on finding open shooters, understanding skip passes, the way that the offense is supposed to be run, variations of pick and roll and variations of kick out passes off of those variations. You're starting to see that more concretely, at least when Ty Jerome is running the show. And I have very little concern about Jerome being able to do what the Grizzlies need him to do in that standing. I also think the MVP of the preseason so far is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He's played in 2 games, and he has looked darn good in 2 basketball games. 3 for 4 from beyond the arc in this contest, 13 points, 1 steal, 3 assists, 5 rebounds, 19 minutes of action. So KCP comes in and posts a 13-5-3 line, looking like a guy who is primed and ready to have a bounce-back campaign. Is it going to be worth what his contract is? Time will tell. But that is irrelevant to the Memphis Grizzlies at this stage of the game. They need him to be a contributing force, a contributing player to what the Memphis Grizzlies are attempting to do. And as down as Orlando may have been on him, and understandably so, he looks that good at this point. That's a positive. Another guy who looked a lot better against Atlanta than he did in previous games was Santi Aldama, posting a double-double in 22 minutes. The massive question and concern that is rebounding for this team. Santi Aldama, at least for one night, was able to be a rebounding force for the Memphis Grizzlies. The Hawks only beat the Grizzlies by 2 in the rebounding matchup. It was 48 rebounds for the Hawks and 46 for Memphis. There were other guys across the board that had solid rebounding performances. Jock Landale, 7 rebounds in 23 minutes. But Santi played 1 less minute and had 3 more rebounds. Plus, similar to Ty Jerome, 4 assists, 1 turnover. Sign me up for that. You are looking at a guy in Santi Aldama who can control offensively what this team is capable of when players like Ja and Jaren are not active. And that is something that you can take from preseason basketball. You can take the level of comfort, which we'll talk more about here in a little bit. You can take the understanding of scheme and how they fit, like we talked about a moment ago with Ty Jerome. It shouldn't be a surprise that the more veteran players are more comfortable, even in a new system or a new-ish system under Tuomas Isalo, new head coach for the Grizzlies, because they are the ones who have been through this type of preseason, this type of training camp a week or so ago, this structure of the start of a campaign. They've been through it. They've been a part of it. So them being in a more uniquely positive space compared to their counterparts that we'll talk more about here momentarily shouldn't surprise us in the least. But it still should reinforce, if you're trying to be bullish about this Grizzlies team, even though they have not won a preseason game, and this was the first preseason game that was actually mildly competitive. The Grizzlies lost by double digits in the previous 2. If you're looking for things to be happy about, the guys that are actually going to be playing for this Grizzlies team actually look good. That's a plus. You can also be excited about the continued development of one Cedric Howard. I am excited about the continued development of one Cedric Howard, because Coward is somebody that, going into this game, my biggest concern, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, the guys beyond the veterans that the Grizzlies need to pop in order for them to be a competitive team beyond the play-in have not yet done so. Especially in the fourth quarter, and the Hawks had thrown in the towel at this point. That's important to point out. But Cedric Howard had a really rough start to his preseason. In fact, it took 13 three-point shot attempts for him to make his first one, and that happened late in the game against Atlanta. But Cedric drew contact. Cedric was 6 for 7 from the charity stripe. Cedric drew fouls. Cedric was aggressive, trying to get to his spots. Cedric is continuing to get more and more comfortable. And because of his frame and his length, and because of the investment that has been made in Coward, he is going to be given every opportunity to be one of those end-of-rotation guys from the beginning, just like Gigi Jackson, just like anybody else that we've discussed. So I do think that if you were worried about Cedric Coward, you shouldn't be. Because, again, knocking the rust off is an understatement, considering he's played very little meaningful basketball in the last 18 months or so. And the significant piece for Coward is that he needs to continue to get into rhythm, continue to get comfortable. He just needs reps. And a positive of the current injury situation for the Grizzlies is, as long as he stays healthy, knock on all of the wood surrounding you, he should be just fine in terms of getting those reps as the Grizzlies hit the road for their last two preseason games starting next Wednesday. When we come back here on this special episode of weekend/Monday-ish, we are going to be talking about things that maybe we aren't as excited. Stick around. We'll be right back here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It is their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. A game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat, all through, and wow, you get Peloton IQ system strength coaching in real time. It actually tracks reps, suggests weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. Let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, you put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Monday Night Football is approaching. Washington Commanders, Chicago Bears. Maybe you believe in Jaden Daniels. They might have to do it with the running game with so many receivers out for Washington, but maybe you want to take the over on the rushing yards for Jaden Daniels. You can log into FanDuel. It gives you so many ways to play. You can build a parlay around that idea. You can do various player props, and you can even follow live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little bit in something going on riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Go and check them out right now. Again, a special episode of Locked On Grizzlies here, an experimental episode of Locked On Grizzlies going live after Grizzlies Hawks on Saturday night. Going to carry us through the weekend into our Monday window. Again, this will be more of a bonus content situation once the regular season gets started, but because it's preseason, because the Grizzlies don't play again until Wednesday, this is going to double up as our Monday edition of the program. So DeMichael and I will be back with you on Tuesday. Things to be excited about. We talked about the guys that have been around the block a time or two, the veterans, and then the continued progression of Cedric Coward. Now, maybe we're not as excited. Maybe some things that we're a little bit more nervous about going into this last 2-game road trip stretch for the Grizzlies. My first one is not going to surprise anybody. It's Ja Morant. And I mentioned him earlier, getting 3 less rebounds than Santi Aldama and 1 more minute played. This is a guy who DeMichael has talked about it. You've read about it, heard it on Locked On Grizzlies, other places you get Grizzlies content. This is a guy that's here for a variety of reasons. He is essentially a smaller Zach Edey. He can screen. He's supposedly a good rebounder. He's a good offensive rebounder. The numbers back up per cleaning the glass. He's in the 75th or so percentile, but he's not a great defensive rebounder. He is supposed to be able to allow for Tomas Isolo, the Grizzlies' new head coach, and the Grizzlies guards to execute the scheme, even if it's not as effective as a 7'4", 290-pound guy doing it. It's supposed to enable the team to continue in their progress and where they're trying to go in this space. Fine. When he only gets 7 rebounds in 23 minutes of play compared to Santi Aldama, when he is not in a position to be able to defend the rim, that is an extremely significant issue for the Memphis Grizzlies. Teams get to the rim at will. Atlanta scored at least 26 points in every quarter against Memphis on Saturday night. They scored 34 in the first. And again, early in these preseason games is when it looks closest to what an actual NBA contest will look like. And Ja Morant will allegedly be there, right? He told me I was tweaking, I guess, whatever that means, about injury concerns. But I want to reiterate, Jock Landale is supposed to have a very specific, particular set of skills, like Liam Neeson from Taken. If he's not able to do those things and be that level of creator of space, that eater of glass, why is he there? I would argue that he would not be a good choice for that particular position if we were in a better health situation. Just my point. Rotationally, a concern. That is something I am watching. Jalen Wells, somebody that so much is being expected of because of the Desmond Bane trade, somebody to keep an eye on. Wells did not have the most efficient offensive outing against the Hawks. 15 points, led the team in scoring, or at least was tied with our wonderful Cedric Howard that we mentioned earlier. But Cedric Howard is not expected to be the Desmond Bane replacement, or at least the replacement in the starting lineup. Jalen Wells is. So 2 for 8 from beyond the arc is not good enough. It wouldn't be good enough for Desmond Bane, and Des had performances like that. But that's not good enough. Jalen Wells has to be a more effective creator of offense for himself when he gets those looks. He has to do better than 2 assists. Santi Aldama, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. These guys can't be the ones that are creating offense more so than Jalen Wells, at least not to me. And maybe you can argue that's a little bit, I don't know, unfair, because Wells is just now being asked to take on this larger role. It's like Desmond Bane going from his first year to second year leap. Is that realistic to expect from a Jalen Wells? Maybe not, but it's going to be asked of him. Teams are going to blitz Ja Morant. They are not going to let him attack the perimeter freely. They are going to put bodies in front of him and make other players make choices with the ball in their hands. Is Jalen Wells ready for that? It's hard to gauge that from a preseason game, but Jalen Wells was out there for 25 minutes. Only Javon Small played more minutes than Jalen Wells. 2 assists in 25 minutes of play. That you would like to see a little bit higher, I think it's fair to say. Another thing to be concerned about, I mentioned it earlier in the show, Cedric Howard is continuing slow and steady progress. You should be positive and excited about that. What I'm not positive and excited about is Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams Jr. being unable to play. I'm not positive about Gigi going 4 for 11. And Gigi shot 3 for 6 from 3. So that means Gigi was 1 of 5 on his 2-point shot attempts. And when Gigi did get to the charity stripe, Gigi was 0 for 5. He missed all 5 of his free throw attempts. That is a huge concern. 0 assists, a huge concern. Something that DeMichael and I have talked about ad nauseum on this podcast because it's the truth. If Gigi can't be a facilitator of offense, if he doesn't have to even do what Jalen Wells is going to be expected to do. But if teams know that the ball is going to stop in his hands, it makes him predictable, just like it makes Jaren Jackson Jr. predictable when he's not able to do that. The Grizzlies need one of these guys to pop. Cedric Howard looks like the most likely one to do so in terms of being a productive end-of-rotation guy. Santi Aldama is going to be there. Jalen Wells is going to be there. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Ty Jerome, Ja Morant. We assume Scottie Pippen Jr. will be there, still out due to injury himself. You're having to start to depend on guys like John Conchar if these other dudes aren't going to rise to the occasion. And I know that DeMichael likes John Conchar. I know that you, dear listener, dear viewer, probably like John Conchar. John Conchar seems like a perfectly good dude. He has been in Memphis as long as Ja Morant and Brandon Clark. That's important to remember. He was a part of that draft class. He just went undrafted, rose up through the G League. Conchar deserves all the credit in the world for the NBA career he has made. 14 minutes of play, 0 for 2 from 3, 3 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 turnover, -9 in 14 minutes of play in a preseason game. I have seen enough of John Conchar. But to DeMichael's point, and I don't disagree with him, if these other guys are not going to rise to the occasion and take those minutes, you at least know that Conchar can observe those minutes. It may not be the most explosive experience. The ceiling of the team will not elevate in any way, shape, or form with John Conchar being the guy that you're depending on, but at least he can eat those 10th man. He can eat those minutes. You would rather it be Gigi Jackson because he has more capacity to score. You would rather it be a Vince Williams Jr. because of his two-way potential, and you certainly want it to be Cedric Howard given how he competes in terms of his frame and in terms of his growth offensively that you saw in college. That's who you want to do these things. But in the absence of that progression, you're going to have to count on John Conchar. And maybe you're excited about that. Doesn't do it for me. Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. What are you excited about? What are you worried about from these 3 home preseason games? That's important to point out. The Grizzlies hit the road for the last 2 games of the preseason starting this Wednesday, coming up later on this week. The Grizzlies continue their preseason march. When we come back and continue our march here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to finish up this episode of the show talking about the NBA GM survey, at least one very specific and interesting to me, at least, portion of it. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401k, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives like me, like you. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. They do the heavy lifting for you at Monarch. They link all your accounts in minutes. They see clear data visuals. They give you smart categorization of your spending, and you can feel, finally, like you're in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. Identifying where you're not saving as much money as you thought, and also allowing for you to maximize the investments you care about, increasing your savings rates, allowing you to finance and work easily and review everything with your partner, your spouse, your financial advisor. You get a clear view of your financial health week to week as well as long term. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. Closing out this episode of the show, I am Joe Mullinax, your host for this podcast. Again, recording, posting Saturday night after Grizzlies Hawks. Going into the weekend, this will also double as our Monday show here in the preseason. The Grizzlies don't play again until Wednesday. When we do this sort of stuff moving forward, this will be bonus content. The show might be 10 minutes long, 20 minutes post-game. But because it's preseason and the way that the schedule worked out, if you're checking us out on a normal Monday, you didn't miss anything. Welcome to Locked On Grizzlies. Thanks for starting your week with us. Thanks for hanging out with us whenever you're checking out the show. The NBA.com GM survey came out, and we'll talk more about this on our Tuesday show because I want to make sure that DeMichael gets a chance to weigh in on some of these things. And he's talked a little bit about it in the past. But the thing that was most interesting to me, beyond the fact that the Grizzlies weren't really talked about much at all in this survey, the thing that fascinated me most was one of the things that did stand out from a Memphis perspective is that NBA GMs don't really know what to expect from this Grizzlies team. I believe that was at 7%. It might have been the second most chosen option among NBA GMs. The question was something like, which team is the hardest to get a read on? Which team is the hardest one to predict how their season is going to go? And the Grizzlies were near the top of the list. Now, you're an everydayer to Locked On Grizzlies, hopefully. And if you're not, hopefully you become one after this show. You're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, the whole point of this offseason is that they are less predictable now than they were 6 months ago. Tuomas Isalo in the head coaching role. What will the offense look like? Speed kills, but it also kills possessions. Turnovers were a concern against the Hawks on Saturday night, just like they were 7 months ago under Taylor Jenkins. So where do the Grizzlies go in terms of ceiling, in terms of getting better? Matt Moore of HP Basketball, we'll talk a little bit more about this later on. I did the Locked On Squad show. That was a Western Conference preview. He has the Memphis Grizzlies at the 5th or 6th seed in the Western Conference. He had them in one of his projections, maybe not the most up-to-date one, but in one of his projections, he had the Grizzlies in front of the Houston Rockets. And that led to a lot of consternation, understandably so. Make sure you're checking out that Locked On Squad show. It'll be in our feed when it comes out. I will actually be on it. And it was a good show. I was on it. Of course it was good. But humility aside, the Grizzlies, if things go right, still have Ja Morant. And Ja Morant, when things go right, is one of the best 15 or so players in the National Basketball Association. Jaren Jackson Jr., when things go right, and in fairness to Jaren, they did literally last season, he's a top 20 or so player in the NBA. I'm not going to pull up the graphic for those of you on YouTube of Ja and Jaren being behind that because it's inaccurate in my opinion. And this is Locked On Grizzlies. When Ja Morant is right, he is an all-NBA caliber player. When Jaren Jackson Jr. is right, we saw it last year, he is an all-NBA caliber player. And when you have two guys that are capable of doing that, you're probably a top 10 to 12 team in the NBA. Makes sense. Now you need Zach Edey to pop once he comes back healthy. Now you need Santi Aldama to expand upon the new contract and show his value. Now you need Jalen Wells to be that secondary or tertiary creator of offense, knocking down threes, being that bigger wing that aids things defensively. You need bounce back seasons from Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Ty Jerome, showing that the league got it wrong in terms of not prioritizing him in free agency due to that bad playoff series. Down and down and down the rotation you go into a G.G. Jackson or Cedric Howard, preferably both, being able to keep the lower ceiling players like a John Conchar away from the rotation because the ceiling rises with the younger talent actually executing and doing the things that they need to do. That's a lot of things that need to go right. But if Ja Morant plays 55 or 60 games again and misses multiple weeks of the season, what if? You have to count on a Javon Small more than he's ready to be counted on. And we saw that against the Hawks. Small is not a bad basketball player, but there's a reason he's on a two-way contract. 1 for 8 from the field, 5 assists, but 3 turnovers. He's not ready to be a lead creator of offense for an NBA team, and that's okay. He can go spend a majority of his time with the G League Memphis Hustle and develop there. The Grizzlies are good at that. But it's not outside of the realm of possibility that Ja Morant misses time. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that a sophomore player in a Jalen Wells and a freshman rookie in Cedric Howard are not able to do the things that the Grizzlies need them to do for that ceiling to elevate. It is possible that Zach Edey is not the hand-in-glove fit in this screen-heavy scheme that we think he is. I think it's unlikely that that would be the case, but it's possible. There's so much variance because we don't know what this version of the Grizzlies looks like. We don't know what they look like without Desmond Bane because Desmond Bane's been a part of their reality since 2020. We don't know what this team looks like with Tuomas Isalo as the head coach with a healthy roster because it hasn't happened in the preseason, and it's not going to happen until the regular season is 10 or 15 games in, potentially. So there's uncertainty because there's so much newness. And there's uncertainty because you're not going to get any exposure to what that looks like due to the Grizzlies situation in preseason. That brings us back to where we started. The understanding that the record, if you think Tuomas Isalo was the wrong hire because they're 0-3 in preseason, you're out of your mind. Tuomas Isalo is going to have a chance to have his full roster at some point. And that is when you start measuring. And that is when you start collecting data. The games that have been going on the last week say more about individual players and how they fit within scheme than it does the overall path of the team. Because come opening night, Ty Jerome's not the starting point guard for the Memphis Grizzlies. Ja Morant is. Come opening night, hopefully, Jock Landale's out and Jaren Jackson Jr. is in. And now you get a better understanding of how the best players in the Grizzlies universe will fit with this new Isalo-centric scheme. Let me know what you think of the NBA GMs. How do you feel? It makes sense. It feels like 5 or so seed all the way to missing the playoffs entirely is possible for this Grizzlies team. And with that level of uncertainty, it makes sense for them to vote up the Memphis Grizzlies in that fashion. Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. Let me know in the comments how you're feeling. The next time we're together here on Locked On Grizzlies, DeMichael will be back with me. Again, it'll be the Tuesday episode of the show. This goes live on Saturday night, but it doubles up as our Monday episode. Tuesday, we'll be back with you. DeMichael will be with me. We'll talk more about the NBA GM survey. We'll talk a little bit more about how the preseason has gone so far. Probably going to be some medical updates coming out of practice. You would imagine the Grizzlies won't practice on Sunday, but Monday they should be there. DeMichael should be there with all the information. That'll be our focus on our next episode of the show. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. Become an everydayer. Hang out with myself and or DeMichael each and every time that an episode drops. Be a part of our journey as the season just about a week away now, right? A little over a week away from the Memphis Grizzlies NBA 2025-2026 run getting officially underway. Make sure that you are checking us out first each and every time an episode drops so you are as informed about the Memphis Grizzlies as you can be. I'm Joe Mullinax. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Google, wherever you are hanging out with us. Until next time, see you.